Let's talk about what's currently happening in the United States. And it's serious. Foreign airlines are pulling out of the American market en masse. This isn't just a few canceled flights, it's a real exodus. Cities are seeing fewer tourists, airports are emptying out, and local businesses are losing revenue. America used to attract tourists, students, and foreigners from all over the world, but now it seems people have simply stopped thinking about it. According to the July report, in March 2025 alone, the number of foreign visitors dropped by nearly 1.5%. The drop from Western Europe was 17%, and from Canada, the situation is even worse, down 20% in March, and by June, already -40%. If this continues, by the end of the year the flow of passengers from Canada could become so minimal that no airline will find it profitable to fly to the US. And in fact, they've already started pulling out of these routes. Imagine not being able to find a single flight from Canada to the US. Some regions, like the Caribbean, are also seeing sharp declines, with drops of up to 26%. In total, the US could lose up to $29 billion in tourism revenue in 2025 alone. This is a blow to an entire industry, from hotels to retail. If you've been following the news, you won't be surprised. Much of this is due to Trump's policies. His hardline stance on immigration, trade conflicts, and the America First agenda are making the country seem unfriendly and unwelcoming to the rest of the world. The world is losing interest in the US, and it's coming at a high cost. So let's take a closer look at why this is such a worrying signal for America's future. The US tourism industry is beginning to collapse. Airlines that spent years building routes to the US are now pulling out one after another. Airports are emptying, terminals are quiet, and small businesses are losing revenue. This is no longer turbulence, it's a crash. The first warning signs came from Europe. Icelandic budget airline play will stop all US flights starting in October 2025. New York, Boston, Baltimore, all canceled. Air Canada is doing the same, dropping flights to 5 major US cities: Detroit, Indianapolis, Minneapolis, Nashville, and Tampa. That's already a cut of 300,000 seats. The reason is simple: there's no demand. According to aviation authorities, forward bookings on flights between Canada and the US for April 2025 have plummeted by 71 to 76% compared to last year. In March 2024, Canadians bought 1.2 million tickets for April. This year, only 295,000, a drop of nearly 76%. And when nobody's flying, routes get canceled fast. The summer schedule through October has already been slashed. Even the peak travel months of July and August are down 4%, and it's not just bookings. Border data shows that in February, the number of Canadians entering the US dropped by 12.5%. In March, another 18%, and in April, down 35% at land crossings and nearly 20% for air travel. One might think this is just temporary, but it doesn't seem so. In 2024, Canadians made up a quarter of all foreign visitors to the US and spent more than $20 billion. Now they're simply disappearing. That's almost half the amount Americans spent at McDonald's during the same period. Think about that. And Canada is just part of a much larger issue. According to Tourism Economics, the total number of international tourists is expected to decline by 15% in 2025. Canada is the first, but it won't be the last. The losses, already $12.5 billion. Every 1% drop means nearly $2 billion more in lost revenue and up to 140,000 lost jobs in tourism. And in some border cities, business revenues have already dropped by 30%. This is even reflected in company forecasts. Air Canada has lowered its financial outlook for 2025. Instead of $3.5 to $3.8 billion, they now expect only $3.2 to $3.6 billion. The reason is the same: weak demand for flights to the United States. And it is not the only one. WestJet is canceling 9 routes, including Vancouver-Austin and Calgary-New York. Flair Airlines is shutting down unprofitable routes like Toronto-Nashville and Calgary-Las Vegas, reallocating resources to Mexico, Jamaica, and domestic flights. Even smaller players like Air Transat are exiting the US market and shifting focus to Europe. The impact is also being felt within the US. United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby confirmed a sharp drop in passenger traffic from Canada and announced cutbacks on those routes. Still think America does not need tourists? Then here's a fact. The two biggest sporting events on the planet, the 2026 FIFA World Cup and the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles, will be held in the United States. But if the current trend continues, these events will be remembered not for their triumphs, but for their empty seats. So let's look ahead and see how much worse things could get. These massive events were meant to showcase American greatness to the world, but instead, they are turning into risky bets in the middle of a tourism crisis. The United States has already invested billions of dollars, modernizing airports, expanding hotels, and renovating stadiums, all to attract millions of international visitors. But now, with traveler numbers falling and global sentiment toward the US growing increasingly negative, those investments are hanging by a thread. Tourism experts, economists, and business leaders are sounding the alarm. Now they are questioning whether America can even be a good host and whether anyone will show up at all. Because of Trump's hardline immigration policies, tariffs, and the growing perception that the US is no longer welcoming, not just attendance, but the country's reputation and revenue from these events are at risk. According to estimates by the US Travel Association, if the current trend continues, the country could lose up to $50 billion in tourism revenue. Experts are calling for immediate action to prevent a full-blown disaster. These major events were supposed to showcase America's strength, but Trump's policies, tariffs, entry bans on 12 countries, and harsh rhetoric are making the United States increasingly isolated. And ahead lie hard numbers showing how more and more countries are choosing not to travel to the US. But first, let's look at why Canada was the first to turn away from America. It was a perfect storm of politics, economics, and public sentiment. Trump's America First agenda, including 25% tariffs on Canadian goods and offensive remarks like Canada is the 51st state, sparked a sharp backlash. Former Prime Minister Trudeau called on Canadians to choose Canada, and current leader Mark Carney described the tariffs as a direct attack. The result? A nationwide Buy Canadian movement took off. 91% of Canadians now want to reduce dependence on the US, and 85% already prefer domestic products. A Facebook group called Buy Canadian has over 1.2 million supporters. Airlines are adjusting too. Air Canada and WestJet are increasing flights to Paris, Rome, and Jamaica, while cutting routes to the United States. This is no longer a temporary trend. It's a clear warning sign. Canadian tourists used to bring in more than $20 billion to the US, especially in Florida and New York. If the United States does not roll back tariffs, fix the chaos at the border, and change its tone, this could become the new normal. And Canada isn't just a neighbor, it's an economic pillar, and that pillar is now crumbling. In Florida, for example, Canadian tourists are a key part of the economy. Out of the 142 million visitors the state welcomed in 2024, 3.3 million were Canadians, more than 3 times the number from any other country. But now, airports like Fort Lauderdale and Orlando are reporting a 30% drop in Canadian flights. A Quebec-based travel agent specializing in Disneyland and Universal trips said bookings dropped by 60% in just 1 month, from February to March 2025. Duty-free shops at the border are losing between 40 and 50% of their revenue, and one souvenir store owner reported losing 80% of his business. Tour operators like Maple Leaf Tours in Kingston report a 30% wave of cancellations. Tourist cities and border regions are suffering. In New York, hotel bookings are down 20%, and the ripple effects stretch from Niagara Falls to the heart of Florida. The US Travel Association warns a 10% drop in Canadian tourism could cost the economy $2 billion and 140,000 jobs. But based on current figures, the actual losses could be 3 times higher. So where is all that tourism gold going? Canadians aren't just staying home, they're spending abroad. Domestic tourism within Canada is booming, and Europe is experiencing a surge. Air Canada is expanding flights to Paris, Rome, and Frankfurt. WestJet is adding routes to Dublin and London. Mexico, Jamaica, and the Caribbean are also breaking records for Canadian visitors. Flair Airlines reports high demand for these destinations. And this isn't just about vacations. Air travel means business ties, student exchanges, and cultural influence. Fewer planes flying to the United States means fewer global connections. And as countries like China, Turkey, and Qatar deepen their ties with Europe and Asia, They are bypassing the US entirely. This is no longer just a warning bell, it's a serious wake-up call. America is losing its connection to the world, and the longer this continues, the harder it will be to rebuild the bridges. So stay informed, subscribe to the channel, and see you in the next video.